following video contains strong sexual content and is rated M for mature audiences only. Viewer discretion is advised. Our advice? Don't get caught.
Warning. This video contains super awesome content not suitable for people who don't enjoy super awesomeness. Viewer discretion advised.
This video contains gratuitous use of profanity and uncomfortable pauses to compensate for lack of professionalism and original thought. Viewer discretion advised.
Hello everybody, this is Goddess Kendra. Thank you everybody for all your support. Sorry that I haven't done any videos. I have been feeling under the weather and I have been super busy these days. So today I'm going to do a movie review on Netflix's 2021 movie Passing. It is rated PG-13. It's 1 hour and 39 minutes. You have the cast as Tessa Thompson as Irene Redfield. You have Ruth Negga as Claire Kendry. Then you have André Holland as Brian Redfield. And then you have Alexander Skarsagáard as John. And then you have the director and writer as Rebecca Hall. In 1920s New York City, a black woman finds her world upended when her life becomes intertwined with a former childhood friend who passes as white. So the movie starts off with Claire walking down the street and entering a hotel. And she passes as white. She walks in. And then she stares at a woman named Claire. Claire walks up and is like, okay, I know you, calls her. And then Irene's like, I don't know you. She's like, yes, I do. They get to talking. They end up going upstairs to have a drink. Then the ladies get to talking. And then she's like, this is my husband, or whatever the case may be. She's like, we're wealthy, but if everything is good, we'll move back to New York. He's rich. And then Irene asks Claire, so what are you going to do if he finds out? She's like, oh, I could do whatever I want. So then they have drinks, and then Claire asks John, so do you like Negroes? And he goes, I hate Negroes. She's like, so do you know any Negroes? He goes, no. I hear my friends talking about them and I read about them. And she's like, well, that's not true. Irene plays it off. Excuse me. Then after that, she's like, no, I have to leave. They get to drinking. And then Claire was just like, don't leave me, really clingy. So then she ends up kind of overstepping her boundaries when she just keeps coming over. And I noticed the more she comes over, the more Irene's family starts acting strange. Her sons told Irene, stop treating me like a child, and snatches the cup or whatever out of the hand. The movie is in black and white. Then I noticed the more she comes over, the Redfield's maid gets really too comfortable, starts talking, and she's like, yo, I want you to do this work. This is what you're paid for. She said it really nice. And then I felt from day one, Claire had a crush on Irene's husband, André, and then they go to a party. Brian, I'm calling the character by his real name. Brian, Claire, and Irene go to this party. They're dancing and having fun. And one of the European people that the Redfields know, they get to dancing. And then all of a sudden he's like, oh, that white woman, or something to that degree, something. And then Irene is just like, oh no, everything is not what it seems. So she basically, in so many words, tells them that this woman is black, not white. So even Irene is uncomfortable with Claire coming over too much. I mean, she does overstep her boundaries. First of all, anybody knows I don't just have anybody in my home, and you can't just come over unannounced. That's very disrespectful. So then, what happened? The ladies get to talking. Irene and Claire, she's like, you be coming over here. Like, what happens if you get caught or whatever? It doesn't look right. A white woman hanging out with black people. And I have to say, this movie is going to be a spoiler alert. I forgot to put this in the title. My bad. I apologize. So they get to going back and forth, coming over. She talks about how she's wealthy and that she has a daughter named Margie, which is her world. And then again, asks, what if you get caught? So then Irene runs into John walking down the street. He goes, hi, Mrs. Redfield. And Irene's eyes get big and she runs away with another one of her friends. And she's like, I've been telling her, what if we get caught? What if you get caught? So then they go to this other party. And I recall Claire kind of being flirty with Irene's husband. I'm like, this does not look good. And as they're going to the party, Brian is walking arm in arm with Claire, which if you came with your wife, why are you not walking with your wife? So they're doing everything, and then all of a sudden John shows up. He goes, you're a liar, you're a dark liar, and calls her Niggr and pushes her out of the window. Now, everybody's in shock at the party. They call the police. Obviously, Claire did not survive that tumble. So then the police get called and goes, what happened? Irene is like, she just slipped out the window. Wait, what? So you're clearly going to let this racist European push your friend out the window and then you're going to lie for the overseer? What is wrong with us? Didn't stand up for the friend at all. And I'm just like, I know back then times were different, but nobody could do that to somebody I know and get away with it. And I'm just like, wow. Were you jealous, Irene? And you let this man get away with basically murder, and then everybody's looking at her weird. And I'm just like, wow. Even back then, people wasn't shit. Excuse my language. But like, how you gonna let that happen and then you're not gonna stick up for your friend? I just don't believe in getting down like that. And what upsets me the most is even Irene was passing for white. She was able to go into the hotel and pass as white, but you were mad that Claire did the same thing, which even in my family, my grandmother was very high yellow and some of my aunts could pass. Down south, I totally get it, but how are you judging Miss Claire Kendry, but when you were doing the same thing? So was that like the get back or something? I just don't understand. Even in the movie, Irene Redfield's son was called a dirty Niggr and she was upset, but you just protected the racist, European who killed your childhood friend. And also, the man who played Claire's husband also was in Blue Blood. So right now, I'm going to read a insert by a website called Refinery 29. The passage was written by Nyla Burton on November 10th at 11:30 a.m. So the story contains major spoilers for the Netflix film Passing. The ending of Rebecca Hall's passing is an ambiguous and shifting, perhaps even more so than Neil Laren's 1929 novella of the same name that the film adapted from Passing, leaning into the gray area, refusing to give the audience anything resembling a clear answer. But indisputably, the ending of the movie is about the deadliest obsession of danger, of convolutedness, and what happens when intimacy and kinship go wrong. Passing follows a relationship between Claire and Irene, childhood friends who are reunited by a chance in a hotel while they are both passing for white. Irene is a proud black woman living in Harlem and married to a doctor. Her passing is a mere matter of convenience. When Irene crosses the color line, she forms no attachment or even acquaintanceship. She does it so she can buy toys for her 2 young sons who are dark-skinned and cannot pass, or grab a glass of lemonade at the swanky hotel on a sweltering day. To Irene's, passing is just so silly, insignificant thing. It is also like playing dress-up. She positions her hat, strategically hiding her black features from the white store clerk and shoppers. But Claire's passing is something much more transgressive and internal, an act of racial betrayal that Irene's identity finds repulsive and yet alluring. Neither Claire's husband, John, who hates black people intensely, or her daughter know the truth about her background. Claire, however, longs to return to blackness. Because of this, she latches onto Irene and her family with deadly consequences. After Irene suspects that her husband Brian and Claire are having an affair, and after Claire's husband discovers that his wife is black, a violent confrontation ensues, and the film ends with Claire falling out of a window, her body broken and lifeless on a bed of pure white Harlem snow. The movie somewhat leaves what exactly leads to Claire's death up to the interpretation. We see Irene's hand graze Claire's stomach the instant before the fall. Did Irene push her because she wanted her husband's possible mistress out of their life? John also lunges at Claire angrily because Irene's hand makes contact, and there is a split second where we can't see whether John pushed his wife to her death, enraged by her deception, and then there is the mournful and knowing look Irene gives to Claire as they hear John enter the room screaming. Did the troubled Claire decide to jump then, knowing that her life was already burned to the ground? In the book, the possibility of suicide is more strongly hinted, and with Larson writing that as Claire fell, there was even a faint smile on her full red lips and in her shining eyes. There are many different theories, and as the audience, we're not meant to know which one is the correct version of what happened. By the understanding of the unique way of passing, both the book and the movie handles the theme of longing, we understand the ending. At first glance, passing might seem like just another story about a light-skinned person blending in with white society, filled with anguish and self-loathing and regret. But in truth, this book is a very different kind of passing narrative, and nowhere is there more apparent than examining what each character conveys, fights to protect, and desires. Stories about passing typically explore in the theme of controversialness in Imitation of Life. In 1959, the light-skinned Sarah Jane is passionately jealous of Susie, the white daughter of a Hollywood actress who has employed Sarah Jane's mother. Sarah Jane's obsession with whiteness, her need to acquire it for herself, to hold pass onto the leaving behind everything that matters to her, is the core theme of the film. Eventually, Sarah Jane is destroyed by her pride and by her attempt to leave her blackness behind. The passing, the tragic mulatto trope, is complicated. It is blackness that each character converts or prizes above all, no whiteness whether they are passing or not, and it is the desire and pursuit of blackness, not of whiteness, the ultimate lead to Claire's death. In stories about passing, the interloop and white society is usually pushed because they try to be white, and passing, Claire is punished because she longed to return, but no one, not even her own people, longed for her. It's my dream to come back, Renee Claire tells Irene at the beginning of the movie, invoking her childhood name for her friend. I know, Irene responded with a clear dread in her voice. Later, Irene's husband Brian reads aloud a letter from Claire to Irene, where Irene says she feels a wild desire to return to her community after seeing Irene. Brian seems fixated and perturbed by the phase wild desire and tells his wife not to relent to Claire's wish to socialize. Irene's rejection of Claire's friendship wounds Claire deeply, leading to Claire's coming to Harlem unannounced to confront Irene. Irene responds by saying this isn't safe or the right thing for Claire to come to Harlem to visit Irene and her family, citing John's vicious attitude towards black people and his liberal use of racial slurs. Irene, reluctant to welcome her old friend back into her home for the most passing narrative where the black family and friends usually feel some kind of joy, even if the joy is conflicted at the passing person's return. These are stories of the prodigal son and daughter after all. A reunification, it seems, as the ultimate goal, but the passing almost all the desire, even the white hue, who has ingrained himself into the black upper middle class Harlem society for fun, prefer Claire to remain on the side she has chosen. Reunification is something that inspires dread. It's clear that they don't want her there because she poses some kind of intricate danger. In stories about passing, the interlooper into white society is usually punished because they try to be white. In passing, Claire is punished because she longed to return. No one, not even her own people, longed for her. Much of the movie's plot hinges on Irene's suspicion that Brian has cheated on her with Claire, but is not clear whether the transgression actually occurred. At times, Brian seemed generally innocent. At other times, he and Claire seem much too intimate. But in many ways, Irene's suspicions come from the fact that Brian has broken their original contract. He no longer dreads Claire's return to blackness and no longer sees Claire as a danger. This lack of cohesion between Irene and Brian refuels her suspicions as she only grows more repulsive and yet still more drawn towards Claire. By the time Irene has come to suspect her husband, her quiet rage has grown intolerable. Claire's death is first shown many scenes prior when, after seeing Brian and Claire sitting close together, Irene drops a valuable teapot, breaking it into pieces as Hugh tries to take the blame to save Irene a bit of embarrassment. She refuses, nearly choking on tears as she takes full credit for intentionally breaking the ugly pot that has become to belong to Confederates. I have never figured out a way of getting rid of it until just this minute. Inspiration. I had only to break it and I was free of it forever. Irene tells Hugh shakingly, it's clear that in many ways this is how Irene has always felt about Claire, and it's even more intensified now that she suspects Claire of wanting her life. Claire has made it clear that she desires what Irene has, specifically as black life, a life with Claire abandoned for money, wife to get things I want so badly. I don't do anything, hurt anyone, throw anything away. I'm not safe, Claire tells Irene frankly, much to Irene's discomfort. Mere minutes before Claire's death, before John arrives at the party, Irene asks Claire what she would do if John ever found out she was black. Irene responded, I do what I want more than anything right now. I come up here to live in Harlem with you. Claire laughs joyfully at this, but when Irene looks ill, her fear of Claire's replacing her and stealing her husband and family is palpable at the moment. After Claire dies, Irene is in shock, only coming down the stairs with the rest of the party much later. When she sees Claire's body laying on the ground, she lets out a premortal moan while Brian holds his wife and comforts her, whispering, I love you in the moment. It becomes even more doubtful that Brian had an affair with Claire, as his sole focus seems to be on his wife, and perhaps perversely, we as the audience feel a bit of relief that Irene feels now that she has got rid of Claire forever. The interloper has become vanquished. Her family is safe, and her husband is in her arms again. And worth wondering how director Rebecca Hall's own identity. She is a white woman with a black grandfather who passed for white or Native American. A mighty effect, the decision of the rest of the book's focus on the erotic obsession between the two women and instead hone in on the jealousy that Irene feels. In the movies, Irene is still the most likely culprit of Claire's death instead of John or Claire's own violation. A departure from the book which seems pins Claire's death on her white husband or suicide, and then sends a strong message about the extent to which white passing people fear not only being accepted by the black community. Does this ending perhaps reveal some of Hall's own anxieties of her own projections? Like the ending itself, it was up for interpretation. Passing narratives so often focus on the pursuit of whiteness, but this movie is different because it seems even, especially if you believe Irene pushed Claire purposely, it caused by fervent need to protect blackness, Claire's wild desire to return, and Irene's determination to not let her husband possibly long for Claire, or Irene's long for Claire, as there is a clear erotic tension between the two women. Disrupt with she holds dear above else. Whether Irene and John pushed her or whether she fell herself, Claire's fatal mistake, her death by misadventure, as the police call it, is caused by her longing to cross the color line from white to black. So thank you everybody for listening to my video. Shout out to those who support me, and shout out to my haters again. Love the skin you're in, and have a blessed day.